AEW is reportedly looking at buying out CM Punk's contract, as the sentiment is largely anti-Punk in AEW, but there could be a hinge on the non-compete clause. Could CM Punk actually possibly return to WWE in the future? We're going to talk about that. Thunder Rosa, when is she expected to be back inside of an AEW ring? Orange Cassidy will be defending his AEW All-Atlantic Championship tonight live on Rampage. And what's the latest with Paige VanZant? Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and we've got to talk once again about the Second City Savior, the former two-time AEW World Champion, the former Ring of Honor World Champion, that being the suspended AEW star, that is CM Punk. We have a major update on the future of CM Punk, of course, on the back of his longtime friend, partner, trainer, Ace Steel being fired by AEW this week, weeks after the Brawl Out incident following AEW All Out, the brawl backstage between Punk, Steel, Omega, the Young Bucks, leading to all being suspended and now one of them being terminated, and it would appear that CM Punk could be next out of the door of All Elite Wrestling. Now, following the now infamous All Out pay-per-view post-show press conference, CM Punk and longtime friend Ace Steel are believed to have gotten into an altercation with AEW's Executive Vice Presidents, the Elite, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, during which chairs were thrown, as well as Steel reportedly biting Kenny Omega. Now, as a result of that, we know the fallout of Brawl Out, that was Punk, Steel, and the Elite, and those presents during the altercation, producers such as Michael Nakazawa, Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, and Brandon Cutler, were all suspended from AEW. A suspension that still applies to those directly involved to this day. Those that witnessed the event or were present subsequently were reinstated to AEW. Now, numerous reports this week have indeed revealed that Ace Steel was released or has been released, fired by the company, although the status of Punk up to now remains largely up in the air with not a lot of movement on the matter. All we really knew was that there was ongoing legal issues that were preventing AEW from really proceeding and moving further forward with this. However, we've got an update now from Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and of course, when it comes to Dave Meltzer, with all things AEW, they're largely accurate, they're largely near enough dead on, because he's spoken to either Tony Khan, or he's spoken to Kenny Omega, or he's spoken to the Young Bucks, or maybe even CM Punk himself. He did have a decent relationship with Punk prior to everything that's built up to the incident that was All Out. But he's given an update on the former AEW World Champion situation, reporting that AEW maybe, just maybe, are looking to buy out CM Punk's contract, and thus a return to the company appears unlikely at the time of recording this video. Of course, it's pro wrestling, anything's possible, but here's what Meltzer's had to say, quote, AEW is in talks with Punk about the future, but right now it looks doubtful he will be back. Those with close knowledge of the situation said they are in talks with Punk about a buyout of the remaining years of his contract, which tells you they are not looking to bring him back. The hold-up right now is said to be the non-compete period. Obviously, if the non-compete is an issue, it's about interest in going to WWE, because there's no need for a non-compete otherwise, because nobody else but AEW and WWE can pay him close to what he is making. Now, let's just get to that bit first, because there is more to it about the backstage reaction to Punk within AEW at the moment. That is fascinating. Now, it's not the first time we've heard about a potential buyout of his contract. I have to shout out Wade Keller, I think, from PW Torch. He was the first person to speculate or put out there that he believed that Punk would never return to AEW, and he believed that Punk and Tony Khan, All Elite Wrestling, the legal team there, the legal department, was negotiating a buyout from his contract, because CM Punk certainly feels that if AEW fired him tomorrow, he would have a really strong legal case and he would be able to get his money anyway, and it would involve litigation. It would involve him bringing a lawsuit against All Elite Wrestling. That's where we would be really moving towards. So I think from his position, he's probably saying to AEW, I'm happy to leave, but you've got to pay what I'm owed. You've got to pay what I'm guaranteed paid for the remaining years of my contract. Otherwise, I'm going to get it anyway. I'm just going to bring a lawyer, and that could cost you millions of dollars. So you've got a choice of possibly paying me compensation on top of what you owe me, or you can pay me what you owe me now. Now, AEW, they could also push back and say, wow, we believe we have grounds for dismissal here because you got involved in a backstage altercation. Your conduct was unprofessional in a public setting. You violated your contract, etc., etc. The issue is, if you get into that stage, lawsuit, litigation, lawyers, that can take years and that can cost more money in reality than what it's worth. And the biggest part of that is that non-compete period. CM Punk is happy to leave, and it looks like AEW is happy to pay out his contract. However, they want a non-compete clause where CM Punk does. And in reality, where else is he going to go? He's not going to go to Impact, or he's not going to go to MLW. He's not going to go to New Japan, realistically, because AEW has a working relationship with New Japan, and I don't think New Japan would want to jeopardize that, even for CM Punk. He's not going to work for Ring of Honor because Tony Khan owns Ring of Honor. It's WWE he could go to. Now, it wouldn't be the first time he's negotiated with WWE since he left, since he walked out of the company back in 2014. CM Punk has had negotiations with WWE before. This isn't a new story. This isn't a revelation. Prior to signing with AEW, he's been on record. I had talks. I told them not to mess around and play games. They played games. So I signed with AEW. I went to AEW, and that was really probably the best option for him. But that was the old regime. That was the Vince McMahon regime. The reason why it seems somewhat unlikely, isn't it? Because in reality, the new regime in WWE probably dislikes him more than the old regime did. Vince McMahon, for all of his faults, and there are several, by the way, but for all of his faults, he understood what it was to make money, and business was business, and he was fairly good at putting personal issues aside and bringing people to the company that he felt could make him money. Eric Bischoff, the list goes on and on, right? Hulk Hogan, however many times he brought him back. The list goes on and on. So I think Vince McMahon would have been happy to bring back CM Punk. Triple H, that's a different question, because Triple H and CM Punk hate each other. They hate each other. Triple H was in the meeting with CM Punk when he cut that promo on Vince McMahon and said, I'm walking out. He even pointed at Triple H and said, I resent you for not putting me over at Night of Champions in 2011 when I was red hot and you had to squash it. Now, that was a long time ago. That was nearly a decade ago, and maybe it's water under the bridge, and Triple H is a businessman as well, and he's been signing people and bringing them back, and to be honest, the biggest person he's brought back so far is Bray Wyatt. But bringing back CM Punk to the company, a company that he walked out of under Triple H, that would explode the internet, especially after being in AEW as well. You could argue, why would Triple H want to bring that person into a locker room that is enjoying themselves, that is civil, and there are no issues right now? You've seen the chaos that's been there in AEW recently. So there's lots of different aspects to that, but the fact that Punk is saying, no, I don't want a non-compete clause, in his mind, certainly, he believes I could go back to WWE. Maybe there have been even feelers put out there, you know, and if I was, it's funny because I say non-compete clause, but CM Punk can't do anything wrestling-wise for about 9 months anyway. He's torn his tricep, so he can't wrestle for WWE tomorrow, but he could certainly show up on WWE television. He could go on commentary. He did it before. He could go on to, he was on WWE Backstage before. That was a Fox deal. That wasn't a WWE deal. So that's fascinating. The fact that he's saying, no, I don't want a non-compete. That would imply that he feels like he could go back to WWE tomorrow if he wanted to. Which again is absolutely fascinating. Now, regarding these rumors of Punk's contract potentially being bought out, neither the company nor Punk have himself chosen to comment on the matter yet. It's only really been Meltzer and, as I mentioned, Wade Keller that have really spoken about this first. Although it must be stressed that neither side have made efforts to deny any of these rumors as well. Now, Dave Meltzer then has also shed some light on the AEW locker room's reactions to CM Punk and their current thoughts on the former AEW World Champion. The report notes that Punk's comments towards Hangman Adam Page, as well as his conduct following All Out in that infamous media scrum, that press conference, have turned the sentiment toward Punk backstage into a largely negative one. He writes, quote, the sentiment of those in AEW among most talent, not all talent, was decidedly anti-Punk. Between the television promo on Page, who was overall very popular with the talent, the scrum where he said Page had never done anything in the business, which was taken as AEW means nothing in wrestling. Now, time will tell as to whether AEW will choose to buy out Punk's contract in the near future. Punk undoubtedly still has a lot more to offer to the company, and although AEW President Tony Khan may see the situation backstage as unsalvageable, and thus his departure may be deemed a necessary one. Now, a return to WWE for CM Punk, as I mentioned, has been always viewed as largely impossible. It could never happen after he walked out of the company in 2014. However, as I mentioned, those are looking into this whole non-compete clause thing as a sign that maybe, just maybe, Punk is open to returning to his former employer. Of course, we'll have to wait and see, but just when you thought the year couldn't get any more crazy stories, that could be another one. I would be stunned if CM Punk was on WWE television in the remaining months of this year. Anything's possible. Who knows? Punk at WrestleMania next year? That would be insane. Now, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful has also tweeted on the matter saying, quotes, "There were suggestions from people close to AEW almost immediately following All Out that CM Punk would eventually get a buyout. I don't know that it was in the works that far back, but a lot of people saw that as the likely scenario." So he's saying again that he believes, well, that the sentiment certainly backstage towards CM Punk is largely negative and largely anti-Punk, and the only way would be a buyout. I don't know. As I've said before, I don't expect to see Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks inside of an AEW ring again. In this year, unless Punk is gone. I think that once CM Punk's departure from the company has been resolved, then I think the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, they would return and fairly quickly to television. Again, from a legal perspective, I think they're thinking that if they can't figure out that buyout for CM Punk, and it does get into litigation, and it does get into a legal situation, then they might be in trouble, because Punk can say, well, you know, they were also involved in this situation. They're on television. They're making money. I'm not. What's going on there? I'm still suspended. So it would appear, and this was speculated before, and it's still speculated, it's still alleged, you must say, but it would appear that that uncooperative party here is probably CM Punk, and the one threatening legal action seemingly would probably be CM Punk. If he's actively negotiating a buyout, that means he wants his money, and he wants what he believes is owed to him. And look, if he signed a contract with AEW that's guaranteed for 2 or 3 years or what have you, and especially if it was a no-cut contract, which not a lot of pro wrestling contracts are. There are a couple, people like John Cena and Brock Lesnar, they had no-cut contracts. And if CM Punk signed a no-cut contract with AEW, that's a different matter, because he can then say, look, I'm bulletproof. You can't, unless there is a clause in his contract of gross misconduct, he can say, you can't fire me, you can't release me. But if you want me gone from the company, pay up now, or you can continue to pay me as it's on my guaranteed rate anyway. I get my money. That might be the problem as well. So dependent on how long that takes, and again, according to Meltzer, the sort of the thing it hinges on is this non-compete. Once that's resolved, and once Punk's departure is resolved from the company, then we'll probably see a lot of movement, and probably most likely the return of Omega and the Bucks to AEW television as well. What that would mean about CM Punk's future in pro wrestling, we're not going to know for a long time anyway, because of the injury. But I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine if CM Punk showed up? And you know what? I think Triple H would do it. I think he would do it. I think because of the attention that would get, it'd be almost the biggest. You know, if Punk didn't go back to AEW, if Punk just went back to WWE, that would have been a huge story, ginormous story. Punk's return to wrestling, etc., etc. It's almost bigger. It's almost bigger the fact that he has been to AEW and it ended the way it ended. And now the regime has changed in WWE and it's Triple H. Could you imagine if CM Punk returned to WWE by confronting Triple H? Not that they were going to have a match, because Triple H can't wrestle again because of his cardiac event, but just that image of Punk standing in a WWE ring with Triple H would be insane. Absolutely insane. Again, would you want to bring that atmosphere that he's brought into WWE? I don't know. It's not as creatively stifling, I would think, as it was under Vince McMahon. I think it's a little bit looser. You could argue it's more professional, certainly, in WWE than it is in AEW. Maybe it's the better environment for him right now. I don't know. I really don't know. But if history has taught us anything this year, it's don't rule out anything. Never say never. Anything's possible, especially in the world of pro wrestling. Stone Cold Steve Austin returned to the ring, wrestled a match, main evented WrestleMania, and it's not even on the 10 top stories of this year. So anything's possible. Anything can and will happen, especially in the world of pro wrestling. So you can't rule it out. Let me know what you think. Comment section below about CM Punk. It's a wild story. It really is. A couple of other news stories I want to talk about. Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa, of course, is out of action. AEW Women's World Champion Thunder Rosa as well. They anticipated the return of an injured AEW champion is not likely to happen until next year, 2023. AEW shared an updated poster for the upcoming Holiday Bash editions of Dynamite and Rampage that will take place on December 21st in San Antonio, Texas. AEW Women's Champion Thunder Rosa does not appear on the updated version, suggesting that a possible return for this year is indeed ruled out. Now, Rosa, of course, won the AEW Women's title from Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, in a steel cage match in March of this year at St. Patrick's Day Slam's edition of Dynamite. She was due to defend her title against Toni Storm at All Out on September 24, but was sidelined due to a back injury. Now, she last wrestled during an AEW Dark Elevation taping on August 6 in a six-person tag team match in place of the scheduled title defense between Rosa and Storm. A four-way match took place to crown an interim AEW Women's World Champion featuring Storm, Hikaru Shida, Britt Baker, and Jamie Hayter. Of course, Storm took the victory and has held on to the interim Women's World Championship ever since. She recently spoke on the Busted Open podcast where she explained that she was undergoing physical therapy and non-surgical procedures. Now, a return date has not been signaled, and Rosa indicated that she would need to complete the prescribed therapy before re-entering training for a future return. Meanwhile, Toni Storm has spoken openly. She's desperate to get her hands on Rosa in the ring to make her championship run official, revealing the interim tag was bothering her in a recent interview. Now, AEW President Tony Khan has confirmed that when Rosa returns, she will wrestle the interim champion to unify the two titles. Of course, she was scheduled, this is the thing, she was scheduled to drop the championship to Toni Storm All Out, and there was lots of question about the severity, the legitimacy of her injury. They tried the interim championship thing with Punk, and I think that was fine because he wasn't out for a too long period of time. An interim champion in pro wrestling, I'm not a massive fan of it, clearly, but it's fine if you're out for 6 weeks, you're out for a month, you're out for 2 months, and it's just like, well, they'll be back fairly soon, but we've got other stuff we need to do. That's fine, you can build to that. But Thunder Rosa, if she's not returning by 2023, we don't know at this point what time. There isn't even a time frame from it as well. So she could realistically be out of action for 6 months. The interim championship's ridiculous at that point. When's the time frame? When does Toni Storm get made the Women's World Champion? She should be at this point, and she already is being treated as such. So again, I wonder how long she's going to be out for, Thunder Rosa, and how that affects Toni Storm's title reign, because I think she's done a decent job. Speaking of titles, tonight's AEW Rampage live, we will see a championship match, because of course there's a championship match on every AEW show, and AEW has announced another title match for tonight's episode of Rampage. As revealed in a backstage clip shared on AEW's social media channels, Orange Cassidy will defend his AEW All-Atlantic Championship for the first time in a match with Roosh and the Dark Order's Preston Vance. Now, the clip sees Jose, the assistant, interrupted Vance's interview at a bar backstage at Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida, a mere 24 hours before tonight's Rampage. Jose asks Vance to join them in their faction. Vance refuses, says he fully intends to face Roosh in a singles match during Rampage. Just as Roosh tells Vance that he better bring the fight, Orange Cassidy emerges from under the bar and drops a duffel bag containing his newly acquired gold. Cassidy offers them both a beer before putting his title on the line and challenging them both to a match at the same time. That basically means Orange Cassidy is going to win tonight because he's not going to drop his championship in his first defense. I must be said, I know that Orange Cassidy comes to the ring with his All-Atlantic Championship in a backpack. I'm not a fan of that. I understand it's in character and he's meant to be lazy or whatever, but isn't the laziest thing to do just to put the belt around your waist? I think that's somewhat disrespectful to the title. Maybe that's an old school thing, but I'm not keen on the belt being in a backpack. Finally, Paige VanZant. What's going on with Paige VanZant in AEW? Well, the answer, a short one, not much. Because a recent AEW signing has, quote, disappeared from all talk despite showing promise during training for the ring. Former UFC star Paige VanZant publicly signed her AEW contract on Dynamite earlier this year before she made her wrestling debut back at the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. Now, since then, we've not seen Paige on AEW television, and she now has reportedly disappeared from all talk as per Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. He wrote, quote, Paige VanZant, who has disappeared from all talk, was the subject asked about to her trainer, David Gangrel Heath. He said, yes, I did train her for a little while there. She did well. She didn't train as much as I would have liked her to train, but I haven't seen her since that match. She did that match. She wrote me and said, hey, I'd like to go over the match with you and some critique. And I said, sure. And that's the last I heard from her. She's an athlete. She could have been really, really good at it, actually. But of course, again, she hasn't been spoken really about since. So that's surprising. You know, AEW, I'm sure, paid her very, very well. She's billed to return to the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship on August 20 in a match, or she was billed rather, against Karis Segala. She pulled from the event, however, for reasons she claimed was out of her control in an Instagram post. Previously, there were reports the match would be rescheduled at a later date. That hasn't materialized. So I don't know what's going on with Paige VanZant. Maybe with the departure of Dan Lambert, you know, it means that that whole American Top Team thing has been dropped. I mean, it's not the end of the world, really. In comparison to other things going on in AEW, they might have more pressing concerns. So there you go. So that's the latest AEW news for you for today, guys. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe as well, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts about today's AEW news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.